Testing, 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 testing,
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
testing, testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. You can hear me? Perfect.
Yeah, that's fine. Mine is good. I just have to put it on. Before you leave, I need to touch base.
Stay for the panel. Catch up a little bit.
That's fine. You're good? Okay, that's good. Okay, let's get started. Few people will be coming in, so we have very tight agenda. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So my name is Sunil Sinha. I'm a professor and director here at Virginia Tech. Welcome all of you in one of our building. We have many campuses in Northern. I am mainly based in Blacksburg. That's where our main campus is. If you guys are going to join 2024, we are building a brand new campus. We partnered with Amazon when they decided headquarter 2, HQ2, that will be in Alexandria. So couple of things from logistic point in this. So all the food and all those will be served lunch and where you grabbed your breakfast. Anytime you can go out, you can bring food in this room. So it's not like a typical classroom. This building is, and we have a reception also in the evening today. So we have a very tight 2 days. You should have grabbed folder with agenda and everything. So as you can see the agenda, we are doing this conference for almost like 10 years now. For last 2 years, we did virtual because of the COVID environment. 2019 was the last one we did here. And then we moved to the virtual environment. So we don't seek for abstract and all those, we recruit. So all of you are here because we recruited you. When I say we, the swim board and other member of the swim center, Sustainable Water Infrastructure Management Center, we try to recruit. The purpose here is not like ASC or AWW or any other conference you go. The purpose here is always there is a hidden agenda. It's not hidden anymore. Chasing for some projects or big grants. We are also, I will show you, we are also launching a new PBS documentary. So that's kind of the game plan for this. And we are recording everything here. So we will not put it in public domain or anything. This is just for us to prepare white paper or call to action. So that's kind of our purpose of hosting these conferences. So if you carefully look at the agenda, today we are starting with, of course, we have keynote speaker each day. Today, Ben Grumbles, he's here, so I will introduce him. And then we go into the federal initiative. That's a formal presentation, but we do have a panel setting also for that. And then we go into the second industry. We want to hear from federal what they are doing. We want to hear from industry what's going on. Then we switch after lunch into the panel discussion. That's not formal presentation, but that we want to interact with the audience. right? So everyone need to participate and provide questions, comments, feedback. So that's the format, as you can see. So starting with a Smart One Water, if you can see Smart One Water, that's our NSF, and I will talk a little bit about that. And then the whole watershed scale governance and all those, that how we look the utilities, they have their own jurisdiction, service areas, but how to look beyond that service area, looking into more from the catchment point of view. Then second day when we start with the utility, we want to hear from them what they are doing, just like we want to hear from the federal, from the industry. So utility, we also want to hear from associations. They are also doing a lot of good work, right? And NOCWA and other associations, so on. So we want to hear from them. WEF, there are many organizations. We cannot put all, some are missing, but we rotate like ASC and all those. ASC was last year they were there. Then again, we go into the panel, we talked about the climate change, sustainability, resilience, and then we end up with big data and AI. A lot of talk yesterday, we had the workshop, mainly talking about this whole big data and AI application in the water sector. So that's kind of an overall format for these today and tomorrow. So couple of few things some of you may be aware of these. So these are some of the program from Virginia Tech we have to the swim center. Water ID project started from EPA funding under aging water infrastructure. Basically, Water ID is a digital library. There is no raw data, so it's not a modeling platform. The whole concept came from EPA is that we need some kind of a platform, because in water is not like transportation. In transportation, we have 50 DOT, the TRB, so information dissemination is easy. Here we are talking 50,000. Some utilities are so small that they have very limited resources. They don't come to these conferences. So how to disseminate information, best practices, case study, guidance manual. So that's how Water ID started. It's kind of a digital library in a way. We need to update with a new one. So funding got over in 2015, like any federal grant. Then Pipe ID is a modeling. Pipe ID came after the Flint to develop, that was under congressional direction to establish a database for water pipes. So we did work with 700 cities all across, towns all across US. One purpose of Pipe ID also to engage small utilities. And that's where the challenge came, because small utilities have very limited resources. They don't collect a lot of data. They're more like a crisis mode. When there is a problem, go and fix it. So that's kind of the Pipe ideas. Then SwimEd is our online certificate program. This is non-credit right now. This is, you cannot take these courses to get master's degree. So, but we are planning Virginia Tech next year or 2024 to go into a degree program online. And then the newer one is IVIN, which is we created mainly to support NSF. So I will go a little bit quickly on the NSF2 initiative. There are many projects going on, but these two are our major initiative, not just with Virginia Tech. Let me tell you, this ERC, some of you may be aware of, is Engineering Research Center. So that's a major, I mean, you can go to NSF anytime. Being an academic, we go all the time for projects and all those, typically 2-year, 3-year project. This is 10-year funding. And this is for the societal impact. And the concept started in 1986 to support manufacturing. That's where the NSF ERC stands for Engineering Research Center. But 2018, they got a recommendation from National Academy that you cannot run ERC just like a normal RFP putting in the proposal. You should also provide planning grant, because these are such a big proposal. It's not just one university involved. A lot of other stakeholders like industry and federal agencies all need to be involved as a team. So planning grant was the one. The second recommendation was also that it has to be generation 4 ERC. So what you are seeing on the upper one is that's the concept of generation 4, that it has to be convergent research. That's the one criteria. It cannot be just civil engineering or environmental engineering, but different discipline has to come from social science, economics, and computer science, like that. So it has to be a convergent research. But also it cannot be just research. It has to be innovation ecosystem, stakeholder engagement, workforce development. So these are what they call foundational pillars. So you cannot go to NSF. This is 10-year grant commitment from the federal agencies, NSF. But you have to have kind of a description of each of these foundational pillars, that how you are going to handle these, and also diversity and culture of inclusion, because you are creating a new organization. Center is in their concept is a new organization, so that need to be inclusive. Luckily, we did get planning grant in 2019 with Davis here from Carnegie Mellon, Oregon State University, University of Illinois Urbana, FIU, because we have to include minority institution also. So Florida International University is our minority institution partner. But minority doesn't mean just for namesake. It's all have to be embedded. We have to play as a team. So that's kind of a concept. So what we proposed to NSF is that we want a new paradigm, because they want to see two things. One is societal impact, and second is engineered system. What is going to be an engineered system for 10 years once you are successful. So this is kind of a blueprint which I'm showing you. There's a lot of detail and we can discuss, but I just wanted to show you this is the blueprint which we submitted to NSF. From left to right is, if we are successful in 10 years, then societal impact will come. So that's kind of our story is. So what you're seeing is the test bed, that's also important from NSF. That in 10 years, how you cannot tell that you will apply this to the entire US. So that's why the test bed. So earlier we discussed with Dave also that we should go with one basin, because these basins are very complex in itself. But then the question came with discussion that one basin is not good enough to scale it up. Delaware, we wanted to go with Delaware because USGS is spending a lot of in Delaware River Basin from collecting data from River Lake Stream. So we thought we can build on that. But then with discussion with other federal agencies, Steve Kaufman is here from USGS, from CISA, Homeland Security, and other. When we discussed, we had the workshop, then we decided to go with 3 basin. If we are successful in 10 years in this 3 basin, then we can scale it up. That's the whole concept. And these 3 basins is very typical. Colorado, less water, Delaware, more water, but other issues. And then Biscayne Bay is more kind of a coastal representation. So that's kind of our storyline is. And as you can see here, the basin, each basin, like if you look at Delaware, yesterday we were having a workshop. Delaware has 840 water utilities in that, 847 to be precise. So it's a big catchment area. So, and there is, it's not like a boundary. These are natural boundary, but they interact, interbasin and all those. So there is a dependencies, interdependencies within the basin also. So that's kind of our game plan is. So second initiative is, before I hand over to our keynote speaker, is also documentary. I don't know if you have watched Liquid Asset or not. I made this documentary. This is a PBS documentary. It came in the PBS when I was at Penn State University. Penn State has its own PBS, and today our keynote speaker, Ben Grumbles, was at EP at that time. He featured in that as a main. So if you have watched that documentary, you can recognize Ben when he was at EPA. So Liquid Asset got good impact, as you can see here listed, but also I will tell you that I feel proud because I made it. But this Liquid Asset did have impact. That's where the Aging Water Infrastructure Grant came from the Congress to EPA to work in that area. Now we are launching a new, we have already launched the production. We need your help in many ways, by storytelling or identifying so this will be, the Liquid Asset was more at that time. I was assistant professor at Penn State at that time. I didn't have experience, but theme was, I wanted to show aging infrastructure. That was the core in developing this Liquid Asset. But now I think we should integrate infrastructure, definitely should be part of it, but also climate change, social environmental justice, those. So that's where we are seeking input. We all need to play together because this is our story. You are here because of the theme of this conference, the whole water governance, big data analytics. So that's what we are going for that. We also held the Future of Water Summit in Miami, mainly to support some of the panel discussions. So as in the panel, you will see some of the things we learned from there. We are going to, maybe we can enforce that, what we learned there, or add some new things. So that's the purpose of this. So we ran kind of a similar in Future of Water Summit also, as you can see here. Only the panel there we had one was also equity related panel. Here because of the schedule, we can fit that. So, but we have the 4. But I'm not saying that's not important. That's very important. But these are the 4 panel session we are going to run in the afternoon. So before I end, I'd like to thank all our sponsors, volunteers, participants, because this is not like a typical conference, right? All of you contribute to this. All our partner universities, Carnegie Mellon, University of Illinois Urbana, Oregon State. So we are all playing as a team here. And whatever we learned today, that's what we are going to record. We will transcribe. We may come with a white paper. I'm not promising that, but we will look into what we learned from here, and we may come and seek your input there. So with that, I will end, and I would like to introduce our keynote speaker today, Ben Grumbles. I knew him for a long time. Ben, I'm honored that you accepted to come and give us your thought. Now Ben is working with, I believe, 50 states, right? So Ben can talk more. So he's executive director of the environmental of the state. So he's working with all the states, so he can give a good perspective. Ben, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure. I just want to take it from my pocket.
And your wallet too. Good morning, everybody. Is this for recording purposes? Because it's a pretty small room. I'll keep it on. Yeah, yeah. I got it.
Yeah, mainly for recording.
Yeah. This is the easiest thing I probably will do all day is attach this. I left very early this morning from Annapolis, Maryland, which is only 32 miles from here, and about 3.2 million people and cars coming. And so I'm just delighted that I'm here. And I am so impressed by the agenda and by the opportunity that has been created for this year's conference to share and learn, because we live in truly amazing and impactful times. And I can say that as I'm getting older and older now, because I got thrown into the deep end in the water sustainability and infrastructure and governance world. After law school, I worked on Capitol Hill and in Congress for a committee that had jurisdiction over water laws and watershed management and federal agencies. And then I got a chance to be the leader of the National Water Program for EPA in the Bush administration. And now, after that, I got a chance to serve as the top environment official in the state of Arizona. And as you'll note from my bio, I just recently finished serving as the longest serving environment secretary in the state of Maryland. So Arizona to Maryland is quite a difference in terms of the different water governance challenges, the politics, and the necessity for collaboration and sustainability. But between those two state service jobs, one of my greatest opportunities was to head up the U.S. Water Alliance. And so in 2014 and full scale in 2015, we launched this phrase called One Water. And I'm so delighted that you're focusing in on Smart One Water, Sunil, and my successor to the U.S. Water Alliance is Radhika Fox, who is now President Biden's and Administrator Reagan's top water official for the country at the U.S. EPA. And so every strategy on infrastructure and equity and sustainability and affordability relate to integrated one water management. And it requires facts and science and data behind every buzzword, like one water or sustainability or resilience or equity, is a tremendous amount of data and information and thoughtful, smart people. So I get really excited when universities are conveners of utilities and industry and NGOs and state governments and local governments and federal governments all coming together to chart a course to meet some of our greatest challenges and opportunities. This keynote was meant to be just brief, okay? So 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, and I'm already more than halfway done. So I better get to the basic point here. In my current role, working out of Washington, D.C., I have the opportunity on behalf of all 50 of the state's top environmental leaders, secretaries, or commissioners for the governors of each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico and Guam, is to make sure our states are coordinating and working with the federal government and others on the environment beyond just water. But let me just mention the 3 top national issues right now from the perspective of the states throughout the US. And spoiler alert, water seems to run through each and every one of those 3, okay? So first of all, on climate. Climate change is water change. I think I used that phrase for the first time back in 2004 when I was the head of the EPA's water programs for the country and was seeing how this was not just a Clean Air Act, air energy issue. Climate change is water change. Having just come from, not physically, but virtually, COP27, the Council of the Parties, the 27th meeting of the countries on climate change, there was, to my great satisfaction, an increasing amount of attention to the role of water in climate change, not just as a problem where people are wringing their hands saying, oh, sea level rise, flooding, extreme temperatures, extreme weather, but also viewing the water sector as a solution to it. The country, the world will not be able to meet its climate ambition if the water sector and water management isn't focusing not only on adaptation and resiliency, but also on mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions. So I would say over the last 10 years and still now, probably 80% of the attention on water and climate is focused more on adaptation and resiliency. And I understand why, because that's where the politicians, the citizens see local impact. It's not just a distant global thing, it's focusing on that. But the other 20% is on the water energy nexus, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by how you change the management of water to reduce the amount of carbon emissions associated with the pumping, heating, treating, transporting of water. And so COP27 and now here in the US, on behalf of ECOS, the Environmental Council of the States and others, we're going to be focusing more and more around the country in the US on greenhouse gas mitigation, getting towards net zero, reducing the carbon footprint of the water sector. That's such an important component. And I'm excited about that. And it needs data and analytics so that utility leaders can continue to transform the vision of what is a water utility or a wastewater utility of the future, so that particularly for the wastewater sector, it's not just a treat and discharge facility, it's a green factory of reducing emissions, producing energy in more sustainable ways, and getting towards the zero emissions goals. The last thing on climate change is that Maryland and other states around the country are embracing goals. In fact, even before President Biden's audacious goal of 50% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. In Maryland, we adopted that, and we used to call it, cutting our emissions from 2006 baseline 50% by 2030. In other words, half as dirty by 2030. But also, and here's the other component of water adaptation and resilience, using data and analytics. Our nation really needs to be tracking, keeping score, not just our greenhouse gas emissions reductions, but how more resilient are we? Maryland, through the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science and state agencies, is now trying to track, do a better job on scoring, not just half as dirty by 2030, but twice as sturdy by 2030. What are we doing locally and regionally to strengthen our infrastructure systems to adapt and be more responsive and resilient and sturdier with extreme weather or with drought and other components of the challenges ahead? One Water is all about integrated water management and finding those opportunities for reuse. So I know that over yesterday, today, tomorrow, when you are diving into Smart One Water, you need to be thinking about the public health and ecological implications, and that one of the greatest strategies for resilience for economies and communities is safe and strategic reuse, managed aquifer recharge, groundwater recharge, direct potable reuse. As long as we can continue to make real progress on understanding the risks of reuse, but the tremendous advantages of it. And I would just say one of the exciting developments for me over the last decade has been how biomonitoring has really grown, in the sense of states and agencies and utilities recognizing you can learn a lot about your watershed, your community, if you really track what's in your wastewater and stormwater. And during the pandemic, a lot of states in the US, including Maryland, were really beginning to step up for wastewater sentinel types of projects to detect and on a proactive basis prevent death and harm by detecting the COVID virus in wastewater from campuses and larger facilities and apartment buildings. That's a tremendous use. When I was the EPA Assistant Administrator for Water in 2005, that concept came to us in a very different way. It wasn't the COVID virus, it was the White House Office of Drug Policy and Control saying, can the US EPA kind of strong arm and nudge and encourage wastewater utilities to start testing their influent in their sewer sheds for illegal drugs? And that was one of the first insights into privacy and big social policy decisions, but also the power of using scientific analysis to get a real sense of it. Is there a problem? And so EPA got utilities to volunteer to start testing for certain types of drugs, cocaine or other types of drugs in the influent coming in. And to me, that was a real glimmer into with a future of analysis that has led to using the wastewater world and the science behind monitoring and analysis to help prevent, to help save lives and prevent hot buildings, whether it's prisons or campuses, from having greater breakouts without relying solely on clinical testing on each individual person. Just the other two, because I know time is of the essence. The other two biggest national priorities, and I won't spend as much time on them, uh, environmental justice, equity. This is the moment, this is the time for the nation to find ways to advance equity, to increase access to environmental benefits. Everyone who's involved in water knows the challenge over the years in finding that balance between sustainable pricing and affordability. And now, with the very strong need and desire for advancing environmental justice and equity, our nation has to find common ground. So the Environmental Council of the States, one of our priorities, working with EPA and other agencies and the Congress, is to find ways to be able to increase equity and access for disadvantaged, for those communities that are overburdened and underserved. And yes, it becomes a local political decision in terms of priorities, how you prioritize the infrastructure funding, not just for lead pipe replacements, but also how do you make defensible judgments, decisions that are scientifically and legally defensible. It depends on having information as to what communities are in need of water infrastructure investments, and using environmental justice mapping and screening tools. We're spending tremendous amounts of time on that, and there's more common ground than you would think. Although the big challenge throughout the US right now is how do the federal environmental laws, which have permitting requirements, clean water, safe drinking water, other components, align with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. That is the real issue, the opportunity, with a greater urgency and emphasis from the Biden administration on investing, making sure that water permitting decisions, water infrastructure investment decisions, not only comply with the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, other federal environmental laws, but also Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which is, as a matter of federal law, trying to prevent disparate impacts on communities that are disadvantaged. And then the third and final issue, besides climate and environmental justice, I'll just mention this because it doesn't pop up as much on your agenda over the next several days, but it is top front center issue, and that is PFAS, the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances that the science is increasingly compelling, how these quote unquote forever chemicals are virtually everywhere when you really start to look. And so honing using the federal EPA roadmap on PFAS, that is one of the top issues right now, because communities and states don't have the tools yet to be able to detect at those 4 part per quadrillion levels for PFAS components like PFOS or PFOA. It is the epitome of a risk management and risk communication challenge for us in America and around the world to try to prevent manufacture of these chemicals, come up with sustainable and suitable alternates, to develop smarter technologies to detect at extremely low levels these chemicals in not only in the groundwater or in surface water, but in fish tissue and in soils and even in the air, and also come up with deconstruction or decontamination and destruction and disposal technologies. That is the huge question, and it's only going to be solved through a combination of science and policy and collaborative governance. And I just wish you all the most impactful and successful workshop and conference. It's great to be part of it. Sunil, thank you so much. You have a lot to be proud of with the liquid assets and with the continued relentless focus on sustainable infrastructure and managing that not just the infrastructure, but our planet's most precious liquid asset, water. Thank you all.
Thanks for being with us. Ben Dave Dizonback from
Carnegie Mellon
Yes.
University. It probably aligns with somewhat with your three top priorities, but what are could you say something about the top priorities of the states with respect to the bipartisan infrastructure law and how those resources will be invested?
Yeah, and thanks for wearing the UN lapel pin, which is increasingly on sustainability, emphasizing water as well in there. For one of the most important components of all those three priorities is successful implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law. The 50 states formed a focused priority work group on that law, and I would say two of our biggest priorities, and I'm saying on behalf of all of the states right now, is one, working with EPA on that $50 billion unprecedented, once in a generation opportunity to invest in drinking water and wastewater for improved equity and sustainability and resilience. One of our biggest priority is how does that money get out quickly, but also in a way that doesn't lead to failed projects. So building in operation and maintenance and the structure so that the $50 billion as it eventually flows into the states and communities is not designed to fail. Now, in terms of data, big data and governance management, I'd say one of the top priorities as well is how do the feds and the states track the progress on the $50 billion investments. McKinsey and Company and EPA and the states are all, it's not just McKinsey, but there are a lot of smart people identifying, here's the big gap. How are we going to successfully measure jobs created, equity made, impactfulness? So I would say expeditious and successful delivery of the funding, and also metrics for tracking the progress on those investments. And we know the politics is that somebody's going to be any day now attacking, or certainly a year from now saying, waste, fraud, abuse, these dollars aren't being invested wisely. So standing up some type of a federal state metric system for tracking impactfulness of the bipartisan infrastructure law is a top priority. Thanks for the question. That is one of the biggies. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Let's give it another round. Okay, so we switch to our Celine, you are ready for our federal initiative? If you can hear that, they can use now after this session.
Okay, so our first exciting presentations of the morning. We're going to be listening to some of the federal initiatives, and we have 6 excellent speakers for you today. So I'll go ahead and invite Stephen Kaufman to come up from CISA. The format is 15-minute presentations for each. So this is rapid fire, 6 in a row, and then we'll take a pause